Hello, welcome everyone to this exciting journey today as we dive into something super important, the values of values. And let me start with a little story here. But there was a person, Alex, a regular person trying to juggle up family and everything in between. And lately, Alex days felt a bit off, like something was missing. One day, while chatting with a friend, he heard about the power of values, those important things we truly care about. And it got Alex thinking, what really matters to me? My question to you, what matters to you? What are your values? Let's dive into this. Now, fasten your seatbelts as we bring in our special guest, Miguel Lebron, a guru in personal growth. Miguel is here to guide us through real life stories, just like Alex, and we're discovering and living by our values, which can actually make a big positive difference. So, whether you are feeling a bit lost or just curious about making life more meaningful, stick around. Together, we all are going to uncover the magic within our own values. So let's make this our count, right? So before calling Miguel on the stage, let me share something about him, right? So Miguel Lebron is a personal growth strategist, and his experience as a keynote speaker spans 20 years. My God, 20 years. Having worked with multiple non-profit organizations, Miguel has become a powerful community organizer and a leader known for practical strategies, empowering personal and professional growth. Miguel is the CEO of Miguel Lebron Coaching LLC and the host of Strategy Rewind, a podcast that focuses on the mindset and strategies needed for a breakthrough moment. After graduating from the Theological Institute of the Assembly of Christian Churches in 2013, Miguel served as an associate pastor for the Assembly of Christian Churches for nearly 10 years. And since then, Miguel has furthered his education, attending Woodfield Christian University and obtaining a life coach certification in 2021 from New Skills Academy. And his focus on community, his love for family, and his drive for legacy have followed him to become an even more emotionally intelligent father, husband, leader, mentor, and keynote speaker. Amazing, wonderful. So, without any delay, let's call Miguel on the stage. So, if you're excited, just type welcome, Miguel. And Miguel, we'll be talking to you for next 30 to 40 minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A. So, over to you, Miguel. Welcome on the stage, and the stage is all yours.
Prashant, thank you so much for allowing me to be part of your platform. Thank you to everyone who's connected here today. I really appreciate you all taking the time to connect and finding it of necessity of connecting. Let me initiate by telling you a little bit about myself. I come from some humble beginnings. My mother, she moved from Puerto Rico to Rochester, New York, which is where I'm from. She moved at a very young age. She then met an individual and they began a family. But by the time by the time she was 21 years old, 22 years old, that family had already been broken. And so by the time I was 2 years old, my father and my mother were already divorced. My father, he was in and out of addiction and in and out of jails. And because of this, he was also in and out of my life. So that's the upbringing, right? That's the environment. My mother would later remarry and she maintained married until she passed away. It was in 2016 when my mother passed away. And let me tell you a little bit about this experience, because for anyone who's connected and has gone through this experience of losing a loved one, you know the difficulty and the challenge that exists in that. If we haven't met before, my name is Miguel Lebron, and as Prashant mentioned, I am a personal growth strategist. What this means is that I help individuals think strategically. I help individuals identify their core values. And before I jump into the importance of core value, let me share to you this story about my mother's passing. You see, the year was 2015 when my daughter was born. I'm a father of three girls. My oldest daughter is 10 years old. My second daughter is 8, and my third daughter is 4 years old. And when my second daughter was born in September of 2015, you know that there's a lot of joy when children are born. It doesn't matter what culture you're from or where you are, how much you have or don't have. The truth is, the birth of a child springs a lot of hope. It springs a lot of optimism. It springs the idea that things will get better, right? It's looking at the next generation. It's looking at what you can produce. And so there was much delight for my wife and I. Our second daughter was born. There was a lot of joy for our family. But here's the thing: September, October, November, December. When December rolled around, just a few months later, when December rolled around, we were all gathered at my mother's house. You know, traditionally, my mother would always do a big dinner for Christmas. And I can recall how we were all in the dining room. No one else could fit in that little house, but she was inviting everyone she could invite. She was making plates for everyone. That's the type of person she was. And I recall that in a particular moment after dinner was over, she invited me and my brothers to the kitchen. Everyone stood in the dining room, but my siblings and I, we went to the kitchen. And she pulled us to a little corner, almost at the farthest corner of the kitchen. And she shared with us something very serious. She shared with us that the doctors had diagnosed her with cancer. She indicated that the doctors were not guaranteeing anything would get better. My mother was a woman of faith. So to see her go through this circumstance, to see her go through this situation, it was tough. But you know, one of the things that really moved me was to see her faith. In early 2016, my mother passed away. But it was in that moment when I saw her faith, when I saw her servitude, when I saw her willingness, despite her circumstance, to wanting to help, to reach others. This got me to thinking about something. It got me to thinking about legacy. And legacy to me is how I impact the people that I serve while I'm able to serve them. And legacy to me is also how my family will remember me. So, for example, I podcast. I'm the host of the Strategy Rewind podcast. And I've been doing that for quite some time. We're reaching over 100 episodes. And when I podcast, although I bring on guests and we dialogue, to be honest, the reason I podcast is because I want to leave a legacy for my daughters. I want my daughters to have an archive of what my thoughts, my perception, my perspective, my lessons are. I want my daughters to be able to have that even when I'm gone. You may have picked up on the fact that legacy to me is very important. It's so important that it's actually one of my core values. It became a core value, as I mentioned, when my mother passed away. Her passing was what ignited my journey in looking into my values and identifying the type of legacy that I wanted to leave. My friend, you that are listening, let me ask you, have you thought about the legacy you want to leave? Have you thought about how you'll be remembered? Have you thought about any of these parts that will exist even when you and I don't? So what I'd like to do for the next several moments here is I want to talk to you about the value of having values. Because values are those things that are important to you. It's the standard that you have set for your life. For example, a value is like a compass. And we know that the compass has four major directions: north, east, south, and west. When we talk about values, values are those guiding rules that we have established for our life. So, for example, for me, it's legacy. So I look for ways to leave a legacy. Another value of mine is family. So I look for ways to serve my family, create new experiences with my family. And as a husband and as a father, this is very important to me. Another value of mine is community. So I look for ways to build community, to encourage the people within my community. I believe we should surround ourselves with people that will nourish our vision. I'll say it again. I believe we should surround ourselves with people that will nourish our vision. And of course, there's this great quote that I'm sure you've heard before: be the difference you want to see. So when I talk about community, and I encourage others to surround themselves with people that will nourish the vision, I first have to be that person. These are my core values, and they are the compass by which I guide my life. So, in the moment of storm, in the moment of difficulty, and even in the moment of opportunity, I balance it all with these values. So, values are the standards, as we mentioned. Values serve as a compass. They guide us in the times of opportunity or the times of opposition. How many times have you gone through a struggle, a challenge, a difficulty, but these values kind of keep you? The things you stand for keep you. Or heck, how many times have you gotten an opportunity and you've had to balance out, do I want this or that? I know I've been in that position before. The position where, do I spend more time with my family, or do I pursue more other pursuits, other passions, or even money? And so I find myself doing this balancing act. And the question is, well, how do you decide what to do? The way you decide is by establishing values. Because in the hierarchy of my life, the biggest priority to me is my family and the legacy I want to leave. I think already you're having an idea of how important values are. After all, as I mentioned, they're a compass in our journey. But let me share with you a quote here I have from a individual named Ralph Waldo Emerson. Maybe you've heard the name, but let me share with you his quote. He said the following, quote, "Sow a thought and you reap an action. Sow an act and you reap a habit. Sow a habit and you reap a character. Sow a character and you reap a destiny." Isn't this a powerful quote? I'm sure you'd agree. This is a powerful quote and very simple. But there's some things here that I want you to take hold of. And I suppose if you're taking notes, this is a good moment to take note. Values are those things that are most important in your life. As I mentioned, they're like a compass. So if you're like me and you draw when you're writing notes, you might want to draw a compass. And so values are the compass, right? They're the things that which guide your life, even in the face of adversity, opportunity, opposition, etc. But the next thing that's necessary after you've identified your values is you then have to begin to establish habits that align with these values. For example, as I mentioned to you before, I've had the position where I've had the opportunity for either more money or more time with my family. And even in today's economy or any economy, this is always going to be a challenge. Yet, the way that I've made these decisions is by looking at my value. What do I hold most dear? And in this case, my family. And so it becomes a lot easier to make that decision. But furthermore, because I've made that decision, I am building a habit. I'm building routines. One way to look at habits is to consider the highway. You see, when you're traveling by vehicle, you can travel by road or you can travel by highway. When you're traveling by highway, you obviously can move quickly along. Consider the following. When you put on your clothing today, you didn't even think about it. Like maybe you thought about what you were going to wear, but you didn't think about how am I going to put on a shirt, or how am I going to put on a pair of pants, or how am I going to put on these clothes or that style. You didn't think about it. You just did it. And so habits is formed by the routines we keep. And habits is that thing that you do without even thinking about it. right? Turning on the light, turning off the light, cleaning or sweeping or whatever action is just simple and easy for you to do. Heck, it may not even be simple for others, but because you have what's known as muscle memory and you have the habit, you do it without even thinking. So we have these two parts. We now have values, and from values, we also have habits. And our habits need to complement our value. Otherwise, we'll continue to be at battle with ourselves. Like, how many times have you found yourself wanting to do something, but yet you do another thing? We now have to bring in question, what are our values? If you're consistently doing something that you yourself said you weren't going to do, we have to go back to values. What do you hold most dear in your life? So we've got values and we've got the habits that we need. But I suppose this brings us to a position where I have to answer, why are values so important? What is the value of values? The value of values lies in the routines that we are able to create. Because routines are built in two ways. One, they are built unconsciously, or two, they are built consciously. Routines are built consciously or unconsciously. For example, I remember when I started cooking, and of course, in the beginning, I didn't know a lot. So I would ask my mother or I would ask my friends, I asked my roommate, hey, how do I cook? How do I make this dish? And as they would help me, I would ask questions. Have you ever seen somebody who's been cooking for such a long time that they tell you, just use a pinch of this or a pinch of that? They don't even use measurements, but it comes out perfect. Obviously, they've been doing it for quite some time. But I would ask questions, and it was very interesting when I would ask my friends, why do you do it this way? And they would say, because this is the way we've always done it. Notice how there is a habit that has been created, but it's been created unconsciously. No one's thinking about it. No one's even questioning it. They're just doing it. And oftentimes, you and I fall into this routine. We begin to build routines, build habits, just because this is the way it's done. This is the way we talk to each other. This is the way we engage. This is the way we resolve issues. This is the way we party. This is the way we love. This is the way we fight. This is the way, and this is an issue. Because if we're not conscious on the habits that we're creating and why we are creating them, then truly we may be creating something that is not going to lead to the life we want to live. The value of values lies in that if we do not create values that we are conscious of, that we have ourselves selected, we won't select our habits. That is, if I don't select my values, how am I selecting habits? I have to first identify what's most important to me. The value of value lies in that I'm able to create the habits that are required to build the life I want to live. And maybe you may be thinking to yourself, Miguel, I don't, it's too hard. It's too difficult. I don't have the time, the resource. I don't have this. I don't have that. I don't know where to begin. Here's how you can begin to identify your core values. For some of you, the journey of life has forced you to experience the same thing I experienced, the passing of a loved one. And when someone passes away that's really close to you, it causes you to think about your own mortality. And oftentimes in that moment is the moment where you're actually thinking much more clear because you're thinking about what's most important to you. You're like, for example, I don't know if your family is like mine, but I have relatives that when we get together, it's only on the occasion of someone's passing. And when we all get together, there's always somebody who says, we should do this more often. We should do this before someone passes away. They are expressing their deepest thought that this needs to happen. But why is it that Monday through Friday or Monday through Monday, right? The beginning of the week to the end of the week, beginning of the year to the end of the year, and everything in between, why is it that that value isn't upheld? My friends, is because the habits have not been built. And because in the priorities of life, that value has not been given the value it requires. So how do we identify our core values? Some of you have gone through the experience I've gone through, but you don't necessarily have to go through that type of experience to find out what your values are. Here's one way you can identify your core values. Begin to think about your favorite stories. When you think about your favorite stories and the characters that are in those stories, you're likely to see values that those characters that you gravitate to have. For example, my favorite superhero is Batman. What I like about Batman is that he wears a mask. He's not looking for the attention, but he's always looking for a way to help others. And yes, he uses all the resources at his hands, one of which is finances. What I like about him is all those things, but I also like his imperfection. He's not perfect. He gets angry, he gets irritated, he gets bothered, but he always tries to find himself back to what's most important, which is that others would not experience the same emotion, the same feeling that he felt when he lost his parents. So when I look at that, what gravitates me to him are the very things that I hold value. I want to be used by God. I want to impact people, but I'm not looking for fame. I'm not looking for popularity. Listen, as you consider the stories of your life, whether they be true stories, whether they be fictitious stories like the Cape Crusader himself, the fact of the matter is that we can find the values and the things that attract us to these characters. And now you can begin to list these out. You list out these characters. What do I like about this particular character? What do I like about this story? Think about 3 to 4 stories that you like, of characters that you like, and write those out. Write those characteristics out. Because in there are clues of what your values are, of what you hold most dear. It's the reason why you gravitate to those stories and those characters. Let me share with you one of my favorite stories. There's a story of a rainy day. And on this day, the rain was coming down real hard. I mean, as they say in the States, it was raining cats and dogs. And so as it was this rainy day, there was a dog that was passing by. He was looking for shelter. And as he's looking for shelter, he sees a house. Now, on the outside, the house looks very abandoned, very, very, very broken down. But nevertheless, he's looking for shelter in the middle of a rainstorm. He goes into the house and he sees other dogs. And he is surprised. He is surprised at seeing these dogs. But he looks at the dogs and he kind of creeps around to see if they're going to make any faces. To his surprise, they looked at him with a mean face. So he looked at them with a mean face. They growled at him, so he growled at them. They got in a position as though they were going to fight, so he got in a position as though he was going to fight with them. He couldn't believe that he was looking for shelter and in the process found this house of dogs that were all rude. Finally, the rain had stopped a little. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough. And he had had enough, so he decided he was leaving. He left that house, stormed out, huffing and puffing, saying to himself, "What rude dogs I've just encountered." A few days later, yet another rainstorm struck this place, and yet another dog was passing by looking for shelter. He saw this house, and he decided, the house doesn't look so good, but I need shelter. I'll go in anyways. So he went into the house. When he went into the house, for his surprise, there were many other dogs as well. They smiled, so he smiled. They wagged their tail, so he wagged their tail. They moved their ears, so he moved their ears. They bounced around as though to play, so he bounced around as though to play. And before he knew it, the rain had stopped. It was time for him to continue on his journey, but he was sad because he did not want to leave these dogs. After all, he had had such a good time. And so, with nothing else to do, he decided to leave. And he continues on his journey, but as he's leaving this particular house, he goes out the door, down the stairs, and through the pathway. He decides he's going to look back. And when he looks back, he smiles. But as he turns to walk away through this path, his foot gets stuck on a branch. He begins to kick and kick and kick, and finally, he's loose. Despite everything else going well, this one little moment was a sour moment, but nevertheless, he had a good time and walked away. But he did not look back again. You see, my friends, if he would have looked back, he would have seen a sign that said, "Welcome to the house of mirrors." So often, the results we are seeing in our life are a reflection of our own attitudes and the things that we have put as values. And so now I want to challenge you as we talk about the value of values. I want to challenge you to begin to think about what are the things that I've put in primary place, as first place in my life, that don't deserve to be there. Maybe relationships, maybe beliefs, maybe mindsets, maybe attitudes, maybe the fact of the way I view things. What is it that you have given center stage to your life that you should not have done so? And for this reason, maybe you look around and things look negative, things look bleak, things look dark, but maybe things aren't so dark after all, but rather it's your perspective. And let me tell you something, my friend. If there's one thing I've learned is that position dictates perspective. I'll say it again. Position dictates perspective. Meaning, if you're in a position where you are seeking to grow, every opportunity will lead to growth. But if you're in a position of bitterness, of irritation, of frustration, of unresolved emotions, of having yet to actually identify your core values, every situation, regardless of how good it may seem, you'll see it from the perspective of this is the worst day ever. Have you ever met people like that? Have you ever met people that no matter how things are going, they always find the negative? It's like it's a sunny day. Yeah, but it's too hot. Well, it was raining yesterday. Yeah, but it was too wet. Oh, it looks like it's going to snow. Yeah, but I don't like the cold. They always have something to complain about. It's because of their position with their values, or better said, their lack thereof. When you begin to identify your core values, you understand what's most important to you, and it is easy to establish the habits. But my friend, let me tell you the other part of this. Not only is it easy to establish the habits, it's also easier to establish your goals. How many of you have established goals at the beginning of the new year's and never even reached them? Maybe you wanted to work out more, eat healthier. Maybe you wanted to go to bed early, read books, spend more time with your family, do something to better yourself, grow your business, grow awareness. Maybe there was so many things that you wanted to do, and somewhere along the way you didn't. And now we're in December. Maybe now you're feeling sad, feeling like you can't do anything. My friends, here's the reality. The reality is that if you establish first your values, then establishing your goals and the habits that are required to make them a reality would be much more easier. I want to be very clear. I'm not saying the journey will be easier. The journey will still be filled with opportunities and opposition, but it'll be much easier to see your opposition as opportunities when you have identified your core values, when you have identified what's most important to you. So, where then is the value of values? I must take us back to this famous quote that we have read just moments ago, because I believe this quote helps us identify much more than what we realize. Sow a thought and reap an action. Sow an act and you reap a habit. Sow a habit and you reap a character. Sow a character and you reap a destiny. Those are the words of Ralph Aldo Emerson, and I, my friends, agree with these words. The fact of the matter is that if we begin to change one part of our life, everything else will fall in order. It's like going to the gym. And if you've ever gone to the gym, you know that the moment you start going to the gym, you look at yourself a little differently because you've done something that was probably hard. Going to the gym can sometimes be challenging. When you go to the gym, you've now taken this hard act, you did it, you accomplished it. And what that does, that it builds in you the self-confidence of doing more hard things. And really, isn't this what life is about? Being able to see these hard moments, these oppositions, these difficulties as real opportunities. But how can this be so, my friend, if we do not identify our values. So I don't want to leave you empty-handed here. I've already mentioned one way that you can identify your core values. One way to identify your core values is to begin to write down a list of stories that you like, maybe 3 to 4 stories that you like. In that story, find a character or scenario that you gravitate to and write down the characteristics that make that moment, that make that character your favorite. So this way you can begin to identify why do you attract to this character, but also what is it about these characteristics that you like. Here's another way for you to identify your core values. Begin to write a list of things that you don't like. I'll give you an example. I don't like people that lie. I think people that lie lose credibility and cannot be trusted. So that would be something I'd write. I'm not a fan of people lying. I'm not a fan of people who have toxic traits, because people who have toxic traits are only looking for a few things. They're looking for more toxic people, and they're looking for people that are susceptible to their toxicness. I'm not looking for any of that. So I'd write down toxicity. Next, what are some other things, again, that you don't like? Begin to think about things that you don't like. People that waste your time, people that are always arguing, people that are always looking at the glass being empty, people that are doom and gloom. You begin to talk about characteristics that you don't like. Now, let me be clear here, my friends. It may be possible that as you're thinking about the things that you don't like, it may be possible that an image of an individual may pop in your brain. That may be possible. So what do if you're writing out this list and you get to the point where you're like, man, I don't like people that waste my time, and you now have the thought and image of somebody that wastes your time consistently. That's a good moment. That is something that we should not reject. After all, you have now identified someone within your circle that has a characteristics or a value that's not aligned with yours. And you want to get to know these people in your life. Who are the people that have the same values as you and don't? Listen, most likely the people in your life hold the same value as you. But how can they hold the same value as you if you have not even identified your own values? Let me say it again. How can the people in your life hold the same value as you do if you haven't identified your values? I think by now you're seeing the value of values. Not only does it allow us to understand what we want, but it also allows us to understand what we don't want. I refuse to settle. I refuse to lower my standards. Have you ever heard people who say that before? Or maybe you've said it. I refuse to lower my standards. Maybe you've heard a woman who is being presented with a potential mate and she says, no, I refuse to lower my standards. Maybe your job is offering an opportunity and you're saying, no, I refuse to lower my standards. Those standards, my friend, are your values. Those standards are your values. But how can you ensure that the people within your circle have the same values you do if you yourself do not identify your values? So you can identify your values by writing out the stories that you like, characters that you like. Stick within 3 to 4. You don't want to overwhelm yourself here. And you go ahead and identify these stories. What are the characteristics that draw you to this character, whether that be a fictitious character or even a real character? There's a quote of Michael Jordan. And in the world of basketball, Michael Jordan is supposed to be, for many people, the greatest player ever. And he did so many great things as a basketball player. He not only was able to score, but he was also to guard and defend and rebound and block. He did so many great things. But here's one of the things that Michael Jordan himself said. He's quoted to have said that out of all of the skills that he possessed, the greatest skill was the fact that he was coachable. And so we see why people gravitate to Michael Jordan, because they themselves want to be coachable. They themselves want to be someone who can do many great things and impact in many ways. So begin to identify these stories. And another way for you to identify your core values is to list out the things you don't like, right? The things I don't stand for. I don't stand for injustice. I don't stand for prejudice. I don't stand for racism. I don't stand for, right? You begin to list these things out, and it'll be easier for you to then say, okay, well, what is the opposite of that? What is the opposite of that? And why do I hold these things so important? The reality is that sometimes we don't do these tasks. Can we be honest? I've dealt with many clients who oftentimes just don't do these tasks. And if you're thinking to yourself, Miguel, this is too simple. I need something different. I need something that's really going to change my life. Listen, I believe that practical goals lead to a radical life. I'll say it again. I believe that practical goals lead to a radical life. But what does that mean? If the goal here is to identify our core values and how much they are important in our life, why would we make this task much more harder than what it needs to be? It doesn't need to be that difficult. But it does, however, require us taking a moment to sit in silence and be still. For many of my clients, the most challenging part is being still. I work with extroverts, and extroverts like to move around. They're always looking for something to do. In fact, this is the reason why they're always fidgety, because they need something to keep them occupied. And so being still seems to actually go against your own core being. But in the being still, it's easier to identify what are the things that are moving you forward. And here's a tip, my friends. If you can identify what's moving you forward, then it'll be easy to spot the things that are holding you back. Now, I want to say this. Some of you are connected here and leaving questions, and I appreciate your questions. I saw a question come across the screen that asked about how can we make the choice? How can we prioritize? This is a perfect question. How do you prioritize your values when faced with conflicting choices? This is an amazing question, and it should be addressed, and it should be answered. How do we make the quote unquote right choice? Today's conversation is about identifying the value of values. And I hope that I have presented that to you all here today. But if I have not, there's one thing you should take from this talk, that the value of values is that if we do not establish values, we will not achieve the life we want to live. If you take anything from today, take this. The only way to ensure that you're living the life you want to live is to establish your values. Once you've established your values, you can then begin to establish goals. And once you've established these goals, you can then begin to establish the habits that are required to make these goals a reality. So this year I started, one of my major goals this year was to rearrange my relationship with food. And in the process of doing so, I started drinking more water. And so, I had the bad habit where I just wasn't staying focused of drinking more water. Maybe you're like me, in the busyness of life, that just isn't one of my priorities. So what I did was that I set an alarm on my mobile phone. My mobile phone will ring off and tell me, don't forget to drink water. And that would remind me to drink water, and I'll reach over for a bottle of water. And I'll reach over to drink a glass of water. This is a way for me to hold myself accountable and also make sure that I completed the task of drinking more water. I want to drink more water because I want to be hydrated, but also because I want to make sure that I'm ready for when it's time to eat. I now have to also address my relationship with food. So instead of eating massively late or massive heavy food late night or a lot of sweets, I want to make sure that I control this. Now, it doesn't mean that I can't eat those things. It just means that I don't want to go excessive with those things. I want to check out my relationship. Am I eating because I'm hungry, or am I eating because I'm sad or bothered or depressed? And so I began to adjust those things, and then I started going to the gym. So I began to fix all these things, and I started going to the gym. And I wasn't going into the gym, and I have not been going to the gym only to come out sore. That's not my intention. Again, I believe practical goals lead to a radical life. So the intention was build up a nice heart rate. Let me just, lift some weights, do some cardio, but nothing too excessive. I want to make sure the form is correct. I want to make sure that I'm getting the most out of this workout. I started in February of this year, and today is December 2nd in the year 2023. And I'm so happy to say that I've lost nearly 20 pounds this year. And not only that, but I have more energy, more stamina, more desire to continue. And not only that, but there are many individuals within my circle who have felt inspired to actually seek out a new relationship with food and with their personal health. So as you identify your values, it becomes much more easier to build the habits and the goals that align with that, but it also becomes much more easier to build the relationships that complement this to ensure that you're reaching your goals. I do not want to conclude without answering the question that was presented here today, which is the question of how do we then prioritize and make the right choice? My friends, oftentimes when people ask us, are you happy with your decision? Oftentimes when someone asks us, are you happy with your decision? We look at the result. But the question has little to do with the result. The question has to do with the steps and the choice you made. For example, you may have ended a relationship, and months later, somebody asks you, are you happy that you ended the relationship? It's easy to look at the results and say, well, no, because I still haven't started a new one, or no, because of this or that or the other. But that's looking at the results. And decision isn't based on results because, after all, you and I don't know the future. However, we do know the details that are in front of us. So the question of are you happy with your decision lies more with the action that you took. The result is uncontrollable. Can we agree with that? The result is uncontrollable. Don't get me wrong. Some results are controlled. If I go to the gym, I will eventually lose weight. I will eventually be fit, right? Some results are controlled. But if I choose to go on a trip, I fill my gas tank and I go down the road, I have no idea what the result of this trip is going to be. I have an expectation, a desire that I want to achieve, but I don't actually know for 100% fact of what is going to happen. We don't know. You start a new job, a new career, you're very hopeful. You're wanting things to come out well. You start a new relationship, you're very hopeful. The new year is coming up. People are very hopeful that things will come out well. They're optimistic. They have a positive outlook. But do we know for fact of what will happen? No. So how can we look at the results when asked, are you happy with your decision? That question of happiness with the decision is, are you okay with what you decided to do? So let me ask you, are you happy with the decisions you've made? Maybe the result gives you a new set perspective of picking the job over the family wasn't the best decision. Maybe the results give you a new perspective. But if you want to live the life that you should live, that is, that life of impact, of influence, a life founded on your values, then you first begin to identify your values. And once you've identified these values, you can then determine that these are the most important things in your life. That is, in my life, family, faith, legacy, community. I want to serve others, but not at the detriment of my family, because family comes first. I want to leave a legacy, but I want that legacy to be aligned with my faith, because to me, God comes first. By being able to identify my values and then actually list them out in the particular order, now I've begun to prioritize. And when I am faced with a choice of rather I will give others my time and attention or spend time with my family, I can make a very healthy decision. Sometimes the choice is one or the other, but there are these special moments where the time is both. You see, I'm speaking to all of you here today, but I'm also on a trip with my brother. Notice how I've somehow been able to meet both of my core values of time with family, but yet servicing all of you in this community. Thank you so much for your attention, and Prashant for this opportunity.
Wonderful, wonderful. I really appreciate your wisdom, the insights you have shared. And I'm sure, friends, if you are listening to us, I'm sure that you've got the light, you've got some wisdom, and I'm sure that you will follow them. Some of you have shared your questions with me, and there was a question from Healer. How do you prioritize your values when faced with conflicting choices? Okay, that was a good
Mhm.
question and a good answer for this. So
Mhm.
let's begin the small questions like people who have shared with me. The first question is, how do you prioritize? Okay, that was the one which has already been
Mhm.
done. So, okay, have you ever experienced any shift in your values over the time?
That's an
Uh,
awesome question. Yeah, that's an awesome question. Certainly, your values will change 100% because life itself is full of change. For example, what I considered a value when I was 10 years old shifted when I was 15 years old and shifted again when I was 25 years old, married, and our first daughter was being born. And as I sit before you here today, a 35-year-old man, my values have shifted because of the fact of experiences, such as the experience of the passing of my mother and the experiences that I've had with reconnecting with family members or just building out a life as a father. So, yes, your values will shift. And this is why it's important to always reevaluate your values because as life transitions and change, so will you.
right. Wonderful, wonderful. The next question is like, how can one identify and live by the values and contribute to the personal happiness?
Yeah, so multiple things are being asked here. So the identification of core values. Again, we presented two here today in this time space, which is one, write out the stories of the stories that you're attracted to. The heroes or people that you're attracted to, the characteristics that they have. By listing these things out, not only will you identify why you're attracted to these characters, but you'll also begin to identify what is most important to you. And then the other direction to that is list out things that you don't like. Right? You don't like injustice, you don't like
Yeah.
abuse, you don't like lying, you don't like those things. And both the balance of this is going to help you create a list of values. And by the end of these two exercises, you may have a list of values that's probably going to be well within double digits. What you want to then do is challenge yourself to begin to dwindle that list down. So if you are left with a list of 50, dwindle it down to half of that. So that's 25. And then take the 25 and dwindle it down to 10. And then take the 10 and dwindle it down to 4. I always challenge my clients to have at least 4 core values. And the reason is because to me, core values are like a compass. And a compass only has 4 major directions. And the other reason is because if everything is a value, then nothing is a value. So I hope that answers the question of how to identify your values. And then the other part of the question is of living a more fulfilled life. That was the question, right, Prashant?
Yeah.
And so you'll live a more fulfilled life if you establish your life on those values. And so, the values again are is going to be your compass. And so in those moments of challenges, in those moments of difficulty, I heard a phenomenal quote recently that said, history is watching. And this is a powerful quote. History is watching, which means that the decisions you and I make today are going to be written down in history, regardless of what those decisions are. If that's the case, wouldn't you want history to show that you stuck to your values? Wouldn't you want history
Yeah.
to show that you left a legacy? And that's going to lead to a more fulfilled life.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's wonderful. The next question is what challenges, okay, can you please ask, sir, what challenges do people commonly face when trying to live in accordance with their values?
Awesome question. Most often is related to the circle they keep. Because if I am attempting to, let's say, read more books, if I'm attempting to read more books, but everyone around me says reading is dumb, it's for fools. Well, okay, that's the circle. Now, do you think that it's going to be easier or harder for me to keep this goal of reading more books if I'm surrounded by these people? Certainly you would say it's going to be harder. And so one of the biggest challenges, if not the biggest challenge, is the circle that we keep. And so if I have decided to make a change in my life, in fact, when I decided that I was going to change my health habits, the first person I spoke to was my wife. And then after that,
Yeah.
I spoke with my brother and I said, hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing. He said, I'm thinking about doing the same thing. Let's do it together. All right. And so, he has his journey and I have mine, but we became accountability partners to each other. The other part of that is that my wife was also inspired and said that she wanted to do, and she's initiated her own process. So the circle that you keep is massively important. Now, to this, I want to add, Prashant, that oftentimes we can't pick our circles, right? If the person that's watching is, in their mid 30s and has a career, a job, you can move, you can do what you want to do. But if you're watching and you're in your early teens, how some of my clients are, that they're 15 years old, oftentimes, you can't leave your mother's house or your father's house. How can I escape these people that are with me night and day? And the answer is you may not be able to escape them, but you can combat the words they say. How do you do that? By watching podcasts like Prashant's podcast, by listening to the appropriate audiobooks, by listening to music, by listening to books, by being able to immerse yourself. Social media is such a powerful tool that you can go to
Yeah.
Facebook, and anyone who's watching right now can do this. You can go to Facebook, hit the search button, search groups, and type in a keyword, personal growth. And I guarantee you're going to see over 100 groups that are
Yeah.
related to personal growth. Join all of them. Join all of them. Engage. Talk with people. And that's how you'll combat those voices that you may not be able to escape.
Yeah. Amazing. Even I would suggest that just when you search for a group, you get a lot of them,
Mm-hmm.
and you find like-minded people who are of your energy. Even you will be motivated. You will get a kick to do something,
Yeah.
right?
And of course, a simulation comes by way of association. And so what that means is that if I hang around with people that are driven, that are goal oriented, I too will be driven and goal oriented. So again, for the person that maybe, it's your spouse, maybe it's a relative, maybe it's the house you live in, the community, you're like, I can't escape these people. Yeah, you may not be able to escape them physically, but mentally, emotionally, you can escape it by combating it with more positivity and people that actually nourish your vision.
Exactly. Wonderful, wonderful answer. So the next question here is how can I discover my core values if I'm unsure about me?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, it's a challenging thing to come to the realization of the person you want to be when you have not sat in silence. And in the busyness of life, oftentimes we're avoiding these difficult, very challenging questions to ourselves. And so to answer this question direct, the very first task that I do with my clients is that I challenge them to sit in silence. And so when we meet, we sit in a moment of silence, and I want them to then begin to think and envision their desired future state. And this is the life you want to live. If there was no barriers, if there was no economical struggle, if there was no challenges, if everything was fair and everything was good and you could do anything you want to do, what is the desired future state? It's interesting, Prashant, because organizations will establish a desired future state. But when
Yeah.
we talk about personal growth, oftentimes we don't use this. It's a tool that I use with my clients. So you want to first establish the desired future state. Here's something you should know, ladies and gentlemen, that is that your brain does not know the difference between reality and fiction. It also doesn't know the difference between the present and the past or the future. It just knows information. So that means that if you take a moment in silence and you begin to envision a future where you are accomplishing your goals, if you live that moment, you got to sit in this silence, okay? But you want to see yourself and feel that moment. Your brain will take it as a matter of fact. And then what happens is that behavioral action therapy says that you begin to act like that which you want to be. And so if you see yourself and you feel that success and your mind says it's already happened, your body will begin to move towards it. Now, I know maybe that sounds a little hokey for some of our listeners, but it's the truth. It's scientifically the truth. And so for that individual that's asking, well, how do I identify my values? If I don't even know who I am, who I want to be, where I want to be, I challenge you, taking a moment of silence
Yeah.
and begin to think about your desired future state. Once you've once you've seen that and felt it, write it down, and then you want to, on the other side of that sheet of paper, ask yourself, what is it going to require for me to make this a reality? And you'll find there the process of actually identifying your values.
Exactly. It was a wonderful thing that you shared, that mind does not actually create any difference in the reality or your thoughts. When you,
Mm-hmm.
if you, even it is said that if you can visualize something, if you can see that in imagination, you can bring that into your external life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
mind and body is one. If you can create in your mind, your body feels that. Once your body feels that, it's easy to get that in your real life.
Yeah.
It's already there.
100%. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. So there is another question like, are there any values that that sir has intentionally adopted or let go of as part of the personal growth?
Yeah, so my values is legacy, and legacy to me. Now, I'll say this: the what I have done with these words is that I've defined them for myself, and by doing it, it narrows down exactly what I'm attempting to do. And so legacy to me is the way that I service other individuals, right? The way I'm being serviceable and to all of you here today connected. That's part of my legacy, because I may never see you all again. We may never interact again, but this memory of this moment will forever live on. This recording will live on. And so that's part of my legacy. The other part of my legacy is the way the people that I engage with on a daily basis, the people that are part of my family, my circle, how they'll remember me. That's very important to me. And so that's legacy. And the other one for me is faith. To me, my life started, as Prashant mentioned early on. My journey started in nonprofit organizations, and in those nonprofit organizations I was put in position of leadership. Sometimes I was ready for it, sometimes I was just trusted and thrusted into them, but my faith has kept me. It is an anchor in my life, and it is a source of my strength and my hope. And then family is very important to me. So and then following that is community. And so I work diligently to build a community of people that are striving towards growth, mental, emotional, spiritual, economical, personal, right? I'm looking for that. And so these are my core values. And really, it was the death of my mother that really forced me to think about values. If I'm being 100% honest with you all, which I have been, I wasn't thinking about values before the passing of my mother. I just wasn't. It wasn't a conversation. I was serving in nonprofit organizations. I was looking for ways to have impact, but I did not create the compass until my mother passed away. When my mother passed away, that's when the first light bulb went off, and I said, I want to leave a legacy that matters. The second light bulb went off when I was holding my daughter, my firstborn daughter, and we were in the middle of the night. She was crying, and I was holding her. And as I was holding her, all of these emotions of abandonment from my father came flourishing through. And I knew at that moment, I want to make sure I honor my family. And as I proceeded forward, it became much more easier for me to identify my values of faith and community. And so, when I look at my values, it's not something that I started off identifying until that those moments came through.
Yeah. Awesome. That's amazing. Your story is actually inspiring. So people should get something out of this.
Thank you.
That's
Yeah.
really good.
Mhm.
So there is a question like, how should we handle the situations where our values are challenged or questioned by others?
You know, my brother and I, we were having a conversation yesterday. And in the conversation, he asked me a question to which I responded no. And we both started chuckling because I gave no justification for that no. And I must admit, it felt weird giving no justification for that no. And so, we were talking about the conversation shifted because we were talking about that, the saying no with no justification. I bring that up here, and I hope that this shows that oftentimes we feel the need to justify our decisions or our answers. And if a value of mine is family, I I don't necessarily need to justify that with anyone. Now I can share with you how I got to that conclusion. But if I am forced to choose over money and family or over faith and money, I choose faith, I choose family all the time, period. And oftentimes we feel as though we are obligated to justify these things. The truth of the matter is, even though it may be awkward or uncomfortable, it's okay to just say no, no, because in saying no, we are creating a new opportunity for us to continue to honor what we have established as a value. Prashant, the people we most deceit, the person that we most deceit, the person that we most abandon, the person that we most lie to is the person in the mirror. It's ourself. Because oftentimes we say, I'm going to do this and no one will stop me. And then we don't do it. And it's nobody else's fault, it's our own. So by establishing a
Yeah.
value and being committed to it, we can be honest to our values, but also to ourselves. And what this does is that it builds in us the self-efficacy that, hey, my words have value, my words have weight, and when I say something, I'll do it come hella high water.
Yeah. That's great. That's awesome. Uh, okay. So, but there's another question.
Mhm.
So, like the technology and digital age, do they have impact on our values?
When we talk about social media, oftentimes individuals will say social media is a bad thing. The truth of the matter is that the way social media functions is by a set of codes which is known as algorithm. The algorithm serves you. That is, if I jump on Facebook and I follow Prashant, I follow his podcast, I follow his news feed, I follow people who are within the same circle as Prashant, my entire news feed is going to be about growth, personal growth, values, habits, mindsets, breakthrough, accomplishment. There is going to be an overwhelming amount of information and content about that because the algorithm, the codes will have worked the way they should work. That is, that they feed you more of what you're looking for. So if
Yeah.
you're looking into social media as a blame, social media isn't the blame. All they're doing is feeding the viewer more of what the viewer like. This is why when you look at either Facebook or Instagram, even if you're on Netflix, they'll say chosen for you or suggested just for you. It's like, for me, I don't like any of this. Well, maybe not the version you are now, but there was a version of you that liked those things. And so we really want to be clear that social media is not going to affect these things because they serve us. AI serves us in providing the information. And so, I would say use it to your advantage. Create groups, create streams that it provides the information that you're looking for personal growth.
Yeah, exactly. So even sometimes when person clicks on a link or a video, and he starts getting the ads and similar videos. So sometimes people say it is the universe who's actually trying to manifest this thing for you,
Mhm.
but sometimes it's not the universe; it's the algorithm.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah,
Right?
yeah. It's not God's fault that you selected a link. That's
Yeah.
on you and your mouse.
Yeah, it was the person who was attracting all these type of
Exactly.
contents. So we have
Exactly.
a question here from B. Sravadi. Sir, what is the difference between morals and values?
That is an amazing question. And in my journey, those are the type of questions that I look for. And when we talk about values, the values are it's that compass, as we mentioned. It's those things that we hold in high esteem. And the values are very much shaped by your relationship within your family, your community. Your morals are actually linked to that, right? Your society. And so the deep relationship is that your morals actually formulate your character. But then the other part, it informs what that compass is going to be. And so this is why maybe you may come to a halt when you're confronted with a situation. You say, I feel something inside of me that isn't sitting right. That's a good indicator. That moral compass is a good indicator of what your values are. And sometimes we ignore these voices, right? We ignore the voice that tells us, hey, you shouldn't go there. You shouldn't do this. You shouldn't say that. You shouldn't hang out with this person. We ignore that and that moral internal compass. We ignore it. But if we were to pay attention to it, it would lead us to discover not only our core values, but it would also lead us to discover our purpose and our passion. It would lead us to a much more profound individual that we want to be. So that moral compass is that internal compass. It's built in, and oftentimes it is formulated or informed by our society and community. But if we pay attention to it, again, if we pay attention to it, it could very much help us identify our core values. Now, here goes back to what I previously mentioned, that a way to identify your core values is to write things or stories that you like, right? Stories of characters that attract you and things that you don't like. I say that because if you're in a group of people that have the habit of, let's say, that they like to embellish the truth, right? They like to lie, they like to fib, then that may affect your moral compass. But there's always these moments where we're conflicted because it's like, man, I've heard these stories of people who are true, but I'm seeing these people who aren't true. Yeah, because you're beginning to identify your core values. And, we talk about children. Children are at a very young age looking for the approval of their parents. It's when they be hit that 10 years old, 10, 11, 12-year old, where most often they're now looking to an outside community. And what happens is that they're looking for people to either confirm or actually bash or go against what their parents have said, right? So if mom and dad said that being honest is necessary, at this point they may be saying, let me see if my friends think the same. And so we see how the difference between those morals and those values lie. We see how that looking for the confirmation exists. And so those morals, again, is that internal part of you. It's that character inside of you that kind of guide you in the initiation process of being a human. But if you dig deeper into those, they will actually shine light of what your values are, and not just your values, but your passion, and actually shine light on various principles that exist.
Wow, that's amazing. So, Shravani, I'm sure that you've got the answer. Just Just type yes if you got the right answer, or if you need more clarity, uh, do write that. And thank you
Yeah.
so much for this question. Okay, so the next question is, sir, please ask what could be the connection between values and mental well-being. Wonderful
Yeah,
question.
of course, of course. We talk about mental health. Mental health is necessary, and I think it becomes more of a prevalent conversation. When we talk about mental health, we all have mental health. The thing about it is the relationship that we have with mental health. You either have good mental health or you have bad mental health. That's the reality. But the status of mental health is a general term. You either have good health or you have bad health, but you have health nonetheless. And so, how do we get to a healthy place of mental health? And how does this align with values? The moment that you identify your core values and you begin to establish habits that honor those values, it's much more easier to have peace of mind, even when things are going difficult. Even when the results may vary and the results don't fully align, the fact is that we can always go back to those core values. And I even encourage, on your phone, make your screensaver your values on your tablet or laptop, or maybe write it on a board, have it hung on your wall. Keep reminding yourself that these are your values, because even in the face of difficulty, you can look back to that. And this is going to create very much a sense of peace, a sense of calm of, okay, I can't control everything. I can't control the outcome, the results, as we mentioned, but my decisions are based on my values, and these are the guiding forces in my life.
Wonderful. Okay, so I'm sure that now you know the connection between values and the mental well-being. So let us know that if you got the clarity on this too.
Mhm.
So it's wonderful. Again, our next question is quite intriguing. So, like, what happens when someone neglects or goes against their values?
When we go against these values, so if my value is family, then that has to ring true. So if my value is my family, then I have to hold them in priority. Now, will I find myself in a position where I have to go against this value? I think you'll find yourself tempted to do so. But now the
Yeah,
question becomes, is it a value? Because if it's a value, think about the things you need to operate and to exist as a human being. You need air to breathe. You need rest. You need water, right? These are the things you need. You can exist much more longer and survive much more longer with water than you can without food than what you can without water, right? So you need water, even if you had no food. But if you had water, you could survive much longer than if you had none. And so there are basic needs that we need. We need air to breathe. We need water. We need rest, right? We need these things. And so if these are things that we need, not just the want, right? The want is an entirely different thing, but that we need. Our values need to be like oxygen. Our values need to be like water. Our values need to be like rest, where it's a non-negotiable. I mean, have you ever gotten tired to the point where you say, I'm going to bed, I don't even care where I'm at. I don't care what's happening. They could be arguing and fighting around you. There could be whatever is going on, but you're so tired that this is the moment you're going to rest. Or when you are just, in need of water, and you are thirsty beyond compare. At that
yeah,
moment, regardless of what's happening, the priority becomes getting water. And so this is the place where we have to get to with our values, where my value is
yeah.
family, period. My value is XYZ, right? You fill in the blank. I'm using mine as our example, but you can fill in the blank of what your value is. And it really needs to become a non-negotiable. Non-negotiables, when we talk about in the business world, in a business world, we come to a meeting and we say, okay, here's the money we're willing to give you. Here's the service we're expecting from you. And then you review. And there are some things that you come back with a red marker and you say, this is non-negotiable. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to go there. I'm not. And you have to create a list of your non-negotiables. I am not going to be unfaithful. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to go back on my standard. I'm not going to, like, you have to create these non-negotiables. So to the question of, well, what if we do? No, there should not be the what if. We have to eliminate the what if, right? We
Yeah,
have to. There may be moments where we'll have to pick one over the other, but even in those moments, as I illustrated previously, we can make it work because they are our values. And so there
yeah,
is a way to kind of have that all synchronized, if you will.
that's right. So even I agree to this. So thank you so much for this wonderful answer. I have two more questions. The first
Mhm.
one is, what kind of steps can someone take today to start living a life more aligned with his values?
Yeah. The first step you want to do is subscribe to Prashant's program. Listen, to, if you want to start living a more fulfilled life, then you have to create the target. You cannot hit what you don't see, and so
Yeah,
you have to create the target. What does a more fulfilled life look like for you? Because for me it may look different, for Prashant it looks different, for everyone else who's connected may look different. So you want to get to a place where you identify, what does a more fulfilled life look like for me? Once you've
yeah,
identified what a more fulfilled life looks like, from there you can deduce what the values are that are needed to make that a reality, right? So if
yeah,
I'm a person that says, for me, a more fulfilled life is accomplishing a PhD, a doctorate, or becoming a doctor, okay, well, it looks like one of your values may be education or knowledge, because you have to study, you have to go in deep. It looks like one of your values may be service, because you have to give back when you're doing those things, right? So by establishing what that actual fulfilled life looks like and defining it for yourself, not for someone else, but for yourself, it'd be much easier to actually establish those values.
yeah. Amazing. So the last question of the session is, any final tip you want to give to the people who are watching us now and who will be watching us later?
Yeah, for sure. So if you're watching right now, first of all, thank you. You obviously are a person who wants to grow mentally, emotionally, physically, economically. You are obviously a person who wants to grow in the 10 life domains. If you're connected right here live today, thank you. For those who are connected in the future and are connected in a different time, thank you for being part of this. Listen, to me, strategy is a defined number of steps that'll help you obtain a breakthrough moment. And what that means is that someone may be 10 steps away from their breakthrough moment, but I may be 20. It doesn't matter. What matters is that I arrived to my breakthrough moment. And so you finally arrived to this place. You're connected here. You're watching, you're listening. Thank you for watching and engaging with this content as much as you have. And thank you for wanting to be a better you, because by wanting to be a better you can create a better future for those who will follow. My tip to you, if you take anything here today, take the following: your values are the compass that guide you through the fogginess of life. And if anything we know for sure is that life will get foggy, life will get difficult. But even in the difficulty of life, as long as you have those compass and you surround yourself with people that will nourish your vision, you're going to be able to accomplish your desired future state.
Wonderful, wonderful. I really appreciate that. You've shown a
Mhm.
great gratitude to all of them who are watching us now and who will be watching us later. So,
Mhm.
thank you so much for all this. And to friends, now as we are reaching to the end of this session, so thank you, thank you, thank you from the bottom of my heart to the amazing audience for joining us today on this enlightening exploration of the values of values. What a journey it has been, filled with insights, reflections, and the wisdom shared by our incredible guest speaker, Miguel Lebron. Before we wrap up, let's express my gratitude again to Miguel. A heartfelt thank you for gracing us with your knowledge, experience, and the passion you bring to the world of personal growth. Your words have undoubtedly sparked inspiration and contemplation among our, like, all of us. So, to everyone watching us, your engagement and your participation actually has made the session truly special. Your questions, your comments, and your shared experiences actually have added the richness to the discussion. So, remember that the exploration of values is a continuous journey. And today, this is the insight, it is just the beginning. Also, if you would like to connect further with Miguel, then I'm sure that he welcomes you, your inquiries, and your conversation. You can reach out to him. So once the session will be over, then I'll mention his contact details, his details to connect. So you can connect with him. You can get the wisdom. You can get the knowledge from him, so that you also grow in life. So, as we conclude the session, let's carry the spirit of values with us, integrating them into our daily lives. As Miguel said, if you take even like whatever the steps have shared in the session, if you just take one and follow that, it will be enough, right? Make sure to build a community that thrives on authenticity and purpose. Once again, thank you to the wonderful audience, to Miguel for being a part of this transformative experience. And I'm really thankful to you, Miguel.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. So thank you, Dr. Agarwal. Thank you, Shravani. Very clearly, you clarified my big doubt. So nice of you, sir. So thank you so much, Miguel.
Awesome.
So for
Awesome.
enlightening all of us. And so until next time, stay true to your values, and may your journey be filled with the growth, fulfillment, and joy. So, for now, thank you so much. See you next week with a new speaker and a new topic. Till then, stay healthy, take care. Bye bye. Namaste. Goodbye to all of you.